Okay, hi guys. Thank you for letting me record this, and so you guys can see it and stop and start where you wish. Yesterday we focused on scales and descriptive statistics in jamovi. I want to just go over that first piece of kind of lead-in of explaining what scales are and how we kind of the thinking behind scales before we get into that jamovi statistics software tutorial. Okay, so this will be kind of a repetition of yesterday. So yesterday we talked about what is a scale, and we talked about how there exists physical scales, right? If you wanted to weigh an apple, for example, this physical object that is an apple, you would put it on a physical scale and it would give you a number that represents the weight or the volume or some measurement of this physical object of an apple, right? But what if we're talking about something like the behavior of self-promoting on Facebook, right? This idea of showing off or telling people about your amazing things that you've done on Facebook, right? This behavior is not a physical object, right? It's this concept, this thing that we might be able to observe with our own eyes, but how do we measure this? You know, we can't reach into someone's head or reach into their heart and pull out this beating behavior and plonk it on a scale, right? A physical scale won't help us here. So this is where psychologists, internet psychologists, social scientists use what is called a psychological scale, or this thing that will help us to measure this non-physical thing of behavior or thoughts and that kind of thing. So we can't use this physical scale in order to measure this non-physical thing or concept. So we might try to measure the behavior of self-promoting on Facebook by asking a question. Right? You approach somebody or you give somebody a survey, and in that survey there is a question or a statement. So the question might go, if you found yourself in the following situation, would you post about it on Facebook? If I was to win some kind of an award, I would post about this on Facebook. Right? So you've got a question, then a statement, and the respondent, the participant in the survey, they would either strongly disagree, slightly agree, or strongly agree with that statement. Right? And then you get a number. Right? And based on that number, you get an idea of how much a person might promote themselves on Facebook. So if someone chose agree here, you'd get a number, a score, so to speak, of 5. So you could say, well, based on this, that person's response to this statement, we can perhaps conclude that they tend to self-promote on Facebook, or they would self-promote on Facebook. But there's a problem here. Can you kind of guess what might be the problem here? And we talked about the problem yesterday. Of course, the problem is that just asking someone to respond to one statement could have lots of different biases that could come into it. What if a person has never won an award before? Right? They might struggle to think, oh well, maybe if I won an award, I might post that on Facebook. I'm not sure exactly. I'm just going to guess what I might do in this situation. Right? So, but then again, someone else might have won an award, and so they know exactly, oh yeah, the last time I won an award, I did post about that on Facebook. Or I didn't post about that on Facebook. The person who won the award and the person who didn't, has never won an award, would have different, perhaps, ways of responding to this, or you'd have different assurances there. So the way we get over that is, instead of just asking people to respond to one statement, we create a scale, a list of statements that people can respond to. And all of these statements theoretically point towards this idea, this concept of self-promotion on Facebook. Now this, of course, you could test all sorts of things or measure all sorts of behaviors or attitudes using this idea of scales, right? Having a whole bunch of statements that point towards to or are related with this idea or this concept of ABC, whatever, XYZ. So in this case, we've got, if you found yourself in the following situations, would you post about them on Facebook? And then you have a whole bunch of statements. If I was to win some kind of award, I would post about this on Facebook. Do you strongly disagree or strongly agree with this statement? If I was to get a promotion at work, I would post about this news on Facebook. If a newspaper article about myself was published, I'd post the link on Facebook. If I was chosen for an all-star sports team, I'd post about this on Facebook. Number 7, if I went shopping and bought something really expensive, I'd post about this on Facebook along with a picture with it. Right? All of these statements, they in some way point to this idea of whether someone would tell people about the amazing things they've done or the amazing things that they have. Right? So this is the idea that we have a whole bunch of statements, and all of these things are related to the idea of self-promotion on Facebook. And if we ask people to respond to all of these statements, then we can take an average of their responses. And that will give us a more reliable indication of their tendency to self-promote or not self-promote on Facebook. Okay, so what I'd like to do is, yesterday what we did was we actually did this together, right? You wrote down on a piece of paper 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I asked you to write down the number that corresponds to your behavior or what your behavior would be on Facebook. So I asked you to just go down each of these statements and respond to what you would do in that situation. And you ended up with a list of numbers, right? Perhaps... So from 1 to 10 there, on the first statement, maybe you were 3, slightly disagree. Number 2, perhaps disagree. Number 2, number 3, maybe slightly agree. You'd have 4 on your list, etc. Right? And then we talked about how to find out your self-promotion score. You would add up all of those responses. So 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 6 plus whatever. And that will give you a total, a sum, and then you divide that by the number of items. So you get an average score. So we did that together yesterday, and we found out that some people were around 1.8. I think I was at 4.8 or something when I thought about what I would do. And these self-promotion scores, they give us an idea of what a person's behavior might be, based on those responses. So we have this scale that measures in a certain way the non-physical, intangible concept of or behavior of self-promoting on Facebook. So we kind of got to here, I think, yesterday, and we were going to start working with some data to show how we can use jamovi, a statistical software, to kind of automatically create self-promotion average scores for respondents to a survey. So we've got actual data from a previous survey that we did here at the lab, and we're going to work with that to give you an idea of how you can use jamovi to work with scale data and end up being able to get the average self-promotion score of people from America that responded to the scale and people in Japan who responded to the scale in this particular survey that we did. So what you'll want to do is click on the link here in order to download the file. Now I know that yesterday most of you downloaded this data file. Just in case, I'm going to leave the link in the description below so you can re-download that file if you need to. So when you click on the download file, I'm going to do it here in PowerPoint, but when you do that, then you should end up with a screen kind of like this. Okay, so you've got the download button there. So we want to download that file. It's a special file for jamovi, and it's got all the data inside of that. So we download that. You'll see a file that you can open up. So I'm just going to click on this file, and that will take me to jamovi. So really quickly, if I jump over, see if I can find jamovi here. Okay, and I have jamovi up here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through the basic structure of jamovi here. First of all, you'll notice that this area here with all of the numbers and all the data looks very similar to Microsoft Excel. And it is very similar. You know, you can change numbers here. The columns, you can delete those columns, you can add columns, insert columns, and all of these rows here, they are people. So these are people that took the survey, and each row are the responses of each person that took the survey. Okay, so that's kind of the basic data area there. And then you have over this side, you have a blank area, and that is where jamovi will put your analysis results. So when you do analyses, they will end up in this big white area there. So let's have a quick look. Oh no, first of all, before that, another thing also to note is that you have these two tabs up the top here, data and analyses. Analyses we'll look at later and kind of have a look at some of these analyses that we can do. And also, in terms of opening a jamovi data file, you can either double click or open a jamovi file that you download, or you can look for it by by opening it, right? So say you were going to open a Word file. It's the same kind of thing. So you'd click on Open, and then Browse, and then you would select the file that you want to open. So any of these files that have the blue with the kind of V thing there, you can open that instead of double clicking. But in any case, I have my data here, and if we have a look at the data, we have some columns here that are named. So start date, end date. That's the start date that a person started the survey and the end date that the person ended the survey. The duration, so how long that person took to complete the survey. The survey was done on an online system that could record this. Then we've got response ID. That's just a unique ID to identify each respondent. It's completely anonymous, but at least we've got this response ID that's unique for each respondent. Then we have friend underscore N. This variable is, we asked the respondents, how many friends do you have on Facebook? And they responded. So the first person here, that person had 4 friends. Person number 15 had 1,200 friends. Right? So people were instructed, please go onto your Facebook account and tell us how many friends you have. There's some other variables here. I won't focus too much on these ones. But these are the ones here that we are most interested in. SPROM1, SPROM2, SPROM3, all the way to SPROM11. These are the self-promotion scale items. So these are the responses that people gave to us on those 10 items, 11, well, we've got 11 in this, but we're going to delete one, but 10 items that measure self-promotion on Facebook. So we don't need self-promotion item number 11, so let's delete that. The way that you delete this is you either right-click if you're on Windows, or Control-click if you are on Mac, or two-finger tap if you're on Mac as well. And that will bring up a menu here, and you can select Delete Variable. So let's just delete that variable. Comes up with a warning there. Yes, we do want to delete that. And there we go. So it's very similar to Microsoft Excel. Right? So in Microsoft Excel, you can delete columns, you can delete data, and that kind of thing. So going along the list of variables here, we've got sex, so the self-reported gender of the respondent. So respondent or participant number 1 was male, participant number 5 was female, etc. And we also have an age variable. So the respondents told us how old they were, and these are the ages of those respondents. And country. So the respondents told us what country they were living in. So we've got Japan, 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 and then if we keep going down, USA. Right? So we've got about 145 responses from Japan and 145 to 296, whatever that is, from the USA. Okay, so we've got all those kinds of variables. Now for us, the interesting thing that we want to do here is we want to, like we kind of started yesterday, we want to transform these 10 self-promotion items, you know, the responses, the answers on these 10 self-promotion items, we want to transform those into one self-promotion average score. That is, we want to figure out what the overall self-promotion score is for each person. Right, so you could go through and add up manually the numbers for each of these people. For every almost 300 people, you could go through and add self-promotion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But that would take way too long. So Jamovi has a feature that allows you to compute or to calculate scores and do computation or calculation on using other variables. So what you need to do here is we need to right click. Let's right click on sex, or control click if you are in Mac, or double finger tap if you are in Mac, and then select add variable and insert computed variable. Insert computed variable. So when we click on that, Jamovi opens up and it gives us this extra blank column here. At the moment it's named R. This doesn't mean much to us, so let's change the name of that column to self-promotion average. Okay, and still we don't have any data in here, right? In that column we don't have any data, so we want to use the 10 self-promotion items to create an average here. So just like you did it yourself on paper, we're going to do that on Jamovi here. So we would go sprom1 plus sprom2 plus sprom3 plus sprom4 plus, and carry on, right? I'm going to copy and paste. It's a bit faster than having to write it all out. You've got to be really careful here that you don't make a mistake in the spelling of these variables, otherwise things will go a little bit strange. So we have the 10 sprom variables in brackets, so this tells Jamovi first add up all of the responses for each person for these 10 items, right? And then we want to divide this by 10, right? So we're taking the average or the mean, right? And then if you press enter, here you can see Jamovi has automatically computed the average self-promotion scores for each person. So it's pretty straightforward, right? So now that we have these self-promotion average scores for each person, we can go ahead and work with this data to find out the average self-promotion score for people in America, the average self-promotion score for people in Japan, using fairly easy to use analysis tools here. So let's first of all get some overall averages. So let's forget about Japan and the US. Let's just see what the overall average self-promotion score is for everybody in our sample. To do this, we're going to close this computed variable screen here, just to give us a little bit more room. And then we want to click on exploration up the top left, exploration and descriptives. I'm going to give us a little bit more room here. Now you can see down here we have the descriptive variables, right? Sorry, we have the variables. We have start date, end date, duration, friend, n, number of friends. Then we have the self-promotion items here. But what we're really interested at this point is the self-promotion average. So you got the self-promotion average there, put it into the variables box here, and automatically Jamovi updates the table in the results area here. So already we can see that the mean, or the average, mean is another word for average. The mean is 3.35, right? So that's the average self-promotion score for everybody in the sample. Right? But there are a few things we want to add to these results. If you click on statistics, we want to add standard deviation here,標準偏差. This gives us an idea of kind of how spread out the scores are. Yeah, it kind of gives an idea of how varied these scores are. So we want to have the mean and standard deviation. The mean and standard deviation you will always report if you are reporting averages. So here we go. We've got a table here with lots of numbers, but we also want to see this visually as well. So we can use plots here down the bottom. If we open this up, we see a whole bunch of different plots that we can use. For this one, we're going to use a bar plot. So click on that, and it gives you the overall self-promotion average score for everyone in a visual format like this, right? But this is kind of boring, right? We're not really interested in the overall self-promotion score of everybody. For us in our lab, often we're looking for cultural differences or cultural similarities. So we want to compare respondents or participants from America and participants from Japan. Now to do that, it's a fairly easy thing to do. We have this box here in the descriptives analysis section called split by. So we want to split the results by country. And here we've got the country variable, so all we need to do is add that to split by, and automatically jamovi gives us the self-promotion averages for Japan and the US. So we can see just by looking at this graph that it appears that people in the US self-promote more on Facebook than people in Japan do. They're both pretty much around the middle, but nonetheless the US does seem to be a little bit higher. So that's the visual side of things. If we come up here, then we see the numbers. The mean, the average, so the average self-promotion score in Japan is 2.97, and the average self-promotion score in the USA is 3.71, and then the standard deviation in Japan is 1.07, and in the US 1.11. Right, so these numbers are telling us that there might be differences. Next week we're going to look at how we can test to make sure, or test to see if these differences are reliable, and if they actually mean anything. So we're going to go over that next week. Okay, so that is the analysis results for self-promotion. What I would like to do though now is, let's jump to the end. Oops, the end, where are we here? Okay, I'd like to do a little bit more practice together. So let's see if there's a difference in our sample in terms of the average age of the participants. Right, so we have, for each participant, we have their age, right? So we want to see if there's a difference in the average age of participants in our sample in the US and Japan. Right, so to do that in jamovi, we go to exploration, descriptives, and then add age to variables and country to split by. Okay, so let's do that together. So we'll go back to our jamovi screen here, and this screen that's showing right now, that is the analysis that we just did. Okay, and we want to do a new analysis, so we click out here in the gray area, and that will kind of clear the descriptives analysis that we did previously. Of course, we still have the results here. And then once again we go to exploration, descriptives, and if we want to find out the average age, if there's an average age difference between our US sample and Japan sample, what do? We add age to variables. Already, Jamovi has given us some results saying that the mean, the average age of our entire sample is 33.7, but we want to split that by country, right? So we add, we add country to the split by window here, and that splits up the results. So we have the mean, or the average in Japan, is 34.6, and the average age in the US for our sample is 32.9. Right, so already we see that there's about a 2-year difference in the average age. Of course, we want to add a few statistics here. Namely, we want to see the standard deviation. So that adds the standard deviation here. And also the bar plot. Right, the bar plot here. There we go. So this gives us a visual representation of the average age in our sample between the US and Japan. Relatively straightforward. So if you want to see the average of any variable at all, you can use descriptives, so exploration, then descriptives. All right, so we've done the average, so we've looked at the average self-promotion score in the US and Japan, and right here we're looking at the average age in the US and Japan. What I would like you to do for homework is I would like you to, on your own, I'd like you to answer this question. On average, how many Facebook friends do people have in the US and Japan? So remember, in our data set, in our data file, we have a column called friend_n. I want you to find that variable and use that variable. Go to exploration, descriptives, and see if you can find out the average number of Facebook friends people have in Japan and the US. So you'll want to write down or take a note of the average, so the mean number of Facebook friends in the US, the standard deviation in the number of Facebook friends in the US, and the same for Japan, the mean, so the average number of Facebook friends, the mean, and the standard deviation for the number of friends in Japan. Okay, so that's your homework, and I will ask you what your results were next week. Okay, guys? Okay, guys? Thank you very much.